Welcome to Psychology 1 online at Butte College. I'm Norm Reese. I'm your instructor and your navigator for this little tutorial. First thing we have is a global navigation bar over here. This bar here is the course navigation bar, and it applies to only this course. Over here in the calendar, you're going to be able to look at a calendar for each one of your classes, and they're going to be different color codes for the different class. This one's already got some information in it for this class. So this will have your schedule and some other information in it. I think it works better than it did in Blackboard. So let's talk about the navigation bar, course navigation bar. You're looking at the home page here. Next one down is a syllabus. This will give you up here a complete hard copy if you want by printing this or clicking on this little icon here. If you click this icon, preview the document, it's going to give you a hard copy right where you're looking. This is a nice feature of Canvas, I think. An improvement over Blackboard. Then on the same page, it'll give you the information that was on the calendar in sequence for the entire semester. This would be things that are due. And this is very handy. This gives you a sequential guide for everything that's due in the course. Inbox is your message center. I don't think it's quite as good as it was in Blackboard, but it's serviceable. Here's the options. Create a new message right here. So you're gonna have to poke around that to get to know that. I'll be sending you a message here. You should have a message in there when this starts. Grades. This is what your grades will look like. Okay, pretty nice. I think it's set up better than Blackboard was. Modules. Now this is where I think Canvas excels. In this particular class, everything is set up in modules by each week and generally by each chapter. So each week has a chapter except for Chapter 2, the biological chapter, which has 2 weeks. Weeks 3 and 4 are both on Chapter 2. All the rest have a single week. But the nifty thing about this is that everything that you are going to be doing, every assignment you're going to be turning in, everything pretty much that you need for those assignments is all accessible in these modules. Now you can get at the modules from the home page down here in the weekly assignment module chart. So at any given time, if you want to go to Chapter 2, click on that, and at the very top of the page will show the Chapter 2. And in here you're going to have something called Norm's Notes to start with. That's my contribution to the content of the course, and we'll go into that in a second. What's due this week will tell you everything you need to know about what's going to be due, what you're going to need to do for it. There'll be a study guide for that week, for that chapter. We'll get into that a little bit more. Then the actual quiz, and then an access to a discussion topic. There are going to be 3 discussion topics in here. Each one lasting 5 weeks. So they'll be available for 5 weeks. And you can turn in your the main post, which is an essay, anytime during that 5 weeks. You'll get a bonus of a couple of extra credit points if you turn it in a week early. Because there tends to be a lot of people who procrastinate and put it off until the last minute. And then there's a study guide. There's originally a study guide for the current week, and at the end of that week, you'll get a study guide for the upcoming week. And that's a good thing to have because this week won't be open until the week gets there. So it's going to be presented a lot like a regular face-to-face class, and in terms of the schedule, most of it won't be available to you until that week gets there, except for each week you get a head start, up to a week head start on the study guides for that material. Okay, let's take a look at the orientation week. That's the first week of class. Now this is, again, laid out sequentially where you do it just by the numbers, 1, 2, 3, till you're done. So the first thing you do is watch the welcome video, which is what you're watching right now. Then you go through 2 or 3 things that will prepare you for a short quiz called the Orientation and Syllabus Quiz, which everyone needs to pass, has to pass, with a score of 100% in order to proceed in the course. This is going to inform and test you on plagiarism, the rules of Butte College, and this course concerning attendance, and those are in terms of your contributions rather than logging in, and then the requirements and formatting of the writing which you do, which is all within the discussion format. And you can read all about that down here in the tutorial I'm posting to the discussions. So first of all, you want to read the 3-page document on avoiding plagiarism. I really suggest that you do this. First of all, to pass the test on orientation and syllabus quiz, and then you're going to be held responsible because you can't pass this and proceed on to the rest of the course until you get 100% there. That will tell me that you know the rules of plagiarism, and then you're going to be held accountable if you plagiarize. After that, you want to read the condensed syllabus, which is a trimmed down syllabus that only contains content that might be on the orientation and syllabus quiz. So then you'll take the orientation syllabus quiz, and you can keep taking that orientation and syllabus quiz as many times as needed until you score 100%. Each time it will tell you the ones you missed if you didn't get 100%, and tells you the correct answers, and then you keep going back and retaking it until you get 100%. Begin reading the chapter. You can do that as soon as you're ready. The quiz and the study guide for Chapter 1 are available in the next module. Then you want to watch the video on how to post to the discussions. If you discover while watching this video on how to post it for the discussions that you're not up on the writing requirements, for example, if you don't know how to provide reference lists and citations, in-text citations, which you have to do for your outside sources, then you should go to this link here, Writing Tools and Tutorials for this class, which gives you video tutorials and all the information that you need to get caught up on that aspect of it. Then in this link down here, you can access discussion 1 and figure out what you need to do for research and reading on that, and then that would be due on the 5th week of the course. So now we click the next, and it takes you to Chapter 1, which you can also access from the home page. This is Norm's note, always at the top of the list. This is Norm's note for Chapter 1's. This contains my content in terms of writing. It'll contain videos on describing various concepts. Sometimes it will include little concept clips that I call them, where it's myself explaining various concepts that are a little harder to understand. It contain interactive exercises, some humorous stuff. Here's a section on critical thinking, and I've included a couple of brain teasers for you, which I think you'll enjoy. That's a typical content in here. Sometimes you'll find an extra little question in here. It won't be anything. You'll just see it in the text somewhere on the page. Not all pages, about half of them have one, and those you have a question. If you can answer it and send it to me in a message, you get extra credit bonus points for answering those. Also, the content that you'll find in Norm's notes can also show up on the first quiz, and I know for a fact that this chapter here, Chapter 1, there is a question embedded in this text, the answer of which will show up on the first quiz for Chapter 1. So it's a good idea to read these chapters. Okay, so we'll go down here, click Next. What's due for Chapter 1? Each chapter will have one of these in the modules. It'll tell you everything you need to know for the assignments and the due dates for that week. All the due dates and the assignments are in the blue lettering here. Okay, clicking next will take you to the study guide for that week's quiz for chapter 1 in this case. Now, what we have here are individual terms, definition type terms, and broader concepts. For example, in chapter 1, one of the broader terms is the experiment. Now, that information in the book will cover, I don't know, 3 or 4 pages. You need to read all of that. In fact, if it's on this list, you need to read everything here and everything related to it. Every term, whether it looks like a definition or not, you need everything around that so that you can connect the ideas, because some of the questions are going to be definition type questions, even though they're all multiple choice. They could be definition type questions, or they could be context type questions where you have to understand the terms and the related and how they all relate to each other. I'm a big fan of making up flashcards. I think it's one of the best things you can do to improve your grade. But make sure when you do that for this class that those cards include broad areas of information and related information, not just the strict definitions. Okay, that still allows you to skip quite a bit of the reading in the textbook. When we click next again, and that takes us to the actual quiz. It's locked right now until a week from the first day. All the weeks start, this is 8/29, that's on a Monday. The last date on there is 9/4, and that's a Sunday. So the week starts at 12 a.m. Monday morning, any Monday morning, and it ends at 11:59 on Sunday of that week. So it's the next minute takes you to the beginning Monday of the next week. So all of the information becomes available typically on a Monday, like the quizzes. And then the testing ends, the deadline ends for that week on the Sunday at midnight, or 11:59 as it works out. And you have 1 week, for example in chapter 1, you have 1 week to read it and take the test. Anytime you can take the test anytime during that week. If you are successful in doing that, taking it within that time frame, you get bonus points for being on time. And I'll show you what that looks like. If you go to the syllabus and we scroll down to, this would be page 5 of the syllabus, it shows you what all the point values are for every part of this course. Here we have on-time points. There are 27 total. The quizzes are 1.5 points each. So if you quiz 1, if you do that in that week, you get 1.5 points, on-time points. If you don't turn it in that time frame, you can still take the quiz anytime between then and the end of the course, but you won't get the 1.5 on-time points. See how that works? Now for the essay, only the essay itself earns on-time points. The 2 replies to others do not. If you turn in the essay in the 5-week period that it's due, you get 2 points, on-time points. If you don't turn it in within those 5, you get from almost to the end of the course, to like a week prior to the end of the course, when they all do. And if you turn in any of them in after their 1-week period, then you don't get those 2 points. And if you don't turn it in there during those weeks, you can turn it in up until a week before the end of the course, at which time the submission windows and the discussions will all close down, because that gives me time to grade them. So the orientation and syllabus quiz is not worth much. It's worth 3 points because it doesn't really measure the content of the course. The quizzes are 100 points each. There are 14 of them. There's a final exam, which is worth 150 points, and those are 75 questions instead of 25, and they're worth 2 points each instead of 4. As it shows here, you got 3 discussions, 150 each, so that's 450 points. Altogether, it's 2,030 points. There will be extra credit available, which I'll post in the announcements. Very easy to do, and I really suggest that a lot of you need to consider taking those, because there's always somebody at the end who could have boosted their grade another grade. Here's my contact information if you need to get a hold of me. Telephone number, you can call me anytime, like after 9 o'clock in the morning up till about midnight. I'm quite available and happy to take your calls, and you can do the if it'll work. If it's not too urgent, I prefer that you send a message in Blackboard. Please do not contact me through my own personal email, and there is nothing, no submittals are accepted. Like, for example, the discussion postings all must be done through Canvas, not through my email. Okay? I'm very receptive to problems that you have, willing to help, even if you want to just chat sometime, or chat about psychology material or not about psychology material. Feel free to do that as well. One thing I haven't covered here, in terms of help, down here on the left, this little question mark here. Whenever you have a question about how something works in Canvas, press that little question mark, then go to search the Canvas guides. Now there's an area here for students right here. This has a whole bunch of different categories. They're very, very well written, very, very, very nicely done on just about everything you can think of. And then a lot of you will probably want to limit your searches to videos, and that's covered as well. So we got list of student videos. Okay, pretty much covers it. So good luck to you. Send me a message. You should find one in your message box, your inbox, from me already. So good luck to all of you. Stay in touch, and good luck in the class.